of the series on how to build a CRM, and we're building a CRM as well as the SK-FAPS stack. So the SK-FAPS stack is the Fast API, Alembic, Postgres, SQL model stack. So we can continue from where we left off in part 1. And we have our FAPS stack app running, or we have to run it right now. So let's run unicorn main app -- reload. When we run it, we should be able to see the API at /docs. So we have our API with posts users out here. Now we're going to run migrations and see how migrations need to be set up. So first step is we're going to set up Alembic for migrations. Now Alembic is basically a migrations layer on top of SQL model. So to run Alembic, we need to install it first. So let's check our Python virtual environment. We have Python 3.10.9, and let's check our pip version. We have pip 22.3.1, and if we run pip install Alembic, that should install it. We can also run pip upgrade, and let's run pip freeze and put the frozen requirements in requirements. So now Alembic is installed. Now we can go ahead and initialize Alembic. So to initialize Alembic, we basically just do Alembic init Alembic, and we're doing this inside our app folder. So here it's saying not empty. I'm just going to delete the folder I have and run it again. So now it created this Alembic folder, and it has the config for environment, and it also has the versions folder, which contains the migrations. It has a script.py.macro, which has information about the models, and we need to configure these. So let's go ahead and first update alembic.ini. So for improving security, we're going to make sure that we don't have connection strings directly in our code. We want to read the connection string from the .env or the environment. So we can comment out our SQL alchemy .url line. I think it's pronounced SQL alchemy actually. So SQL alchemy .url is commented out. Now we can go ahead and create our database. So to create the database, we need to go into our Postgres console. So let's run Postgres psql Postgres, which gives us the Postgres shell. We can create our database. Now we can create our role for the database user. So that's our role. And now we can check if the database was created. So we have our database here. We can check our role, and we have our role created here. Now we need to grant privileges to the role. So we can say grant all privileges on database SK-FAPS underscore dev underscore 1 to SK-FAPS underscore user underscore 1 and hit enter. Now we can alter this role to be able to log in. So that now has login access. Now we need to update our .env file. So let's take a look here. Our env file needs to have the username of the role or the user we created just now, which is SK-FAPS underscore user underscore 1. Our Postgres database is the SK-FAPS underscore dev underscore 1 role. And we can now update database.py to use this value instead of the SQLite value. So here in our SQL Alchemy SQLite URL, it points right now to sorry, it points right now to our CRM DB, and we can uncomment the lines which point to our Postgres DB, and we can construct the SQL Alchemy database URL by concatenating these values. So now we need to initialize the engine. So we can comment out the SQLite engine configuration, and we can uncomment our SQL Alchemy database config. So now we have that configured. We need to update our env.py. Now env.py is inside our Alembic folder. So to configure this correctly, we need to have the .env inside. So the .env is one folder above the Alembic folder. So we need to configure env.py to read the .env from one folder down. So to do that, we need to have this configuration. This relies on the .env package as well as on the OS package. So first let's check which files we have not imported. We need to import our models first. So let's add the model imports in here. This imports from our models.py all the data classes we have declared here. We import SQL model class from SQL model package or module. We import engine from config and pool. We now need to import OS sys and .env. So let's do that here below the context. And we now need to have a path to the .env file from env.py. So this is giving us a path, the .env path to the .env file, which is this one, right? Now we need to configure our connection strings. So we can copy this block here. And now we need to have our SQL Alchemy URL, which is going to be in here. So we've now configured the SQL Alchemy database URL, which is being read from the environment, and it's being set as the SQL Alchemy.url in our config. So that should take care of the config for SQL Alchemy. Now we need to have our target metadata updated. So here we can say target metadata equals SQL model dot metadata. Now we need to make changes to the env.py. So in our env.py, well, we already are in env.py, but below our logging.config, we need to add these two lines. So this is kind of important, but we just did that. So in our script.py.macro file, we need to import SQL model. So let's take a look at SQL model. We add SQL model under script.py.macro. Now we need to add prompt data class. So right now we have our models class, which contains user, CRUD operations, post CRUD operations, and auth operations. We want to add this class called prompt, but before that we'll add a line called import text, which is the it's the non-string version of text, or it's the text column in database. So here we had SQL model field. From SQL model we need to import SQL model and field. So let's do that. From SQL model import field and SQL model. So that's in place, and now we need to import column. From SQL Alchemy import column. Now this is up here, so we don't need it to be down there. And now we can add the prompt data class and CRUD operations, and we can do that just below the post operations down here. And let's just put a line for formatting. Up here. So what that gives us is prompt data class, and we can just double check that post is still there. So post is still here, and user is still connected to post. Now we need to also update user to have a list of prompts. So the same relationship that user has with posts would apply to user with prompts. So we can say prompts list prompt relationship back populates the author field. So author is the foreign key field in prompt. Which is down here. And so we have our user connected to prompts, And in our users, we have the foreign key for prompt ID, and also prompt has a reference to user ID. So that's the author ID, which is the foreign key. And this one back populates user as author. So that's the same relationship we had with post. And let's now continue. So we have to add text column to models.py, which we did up here. Now we can create the Alembic migrations. So to create the migrations, we can exit the shell first and write Alembic revision auto generate dash m create migrations, or create. That now created the migrations file here. Now we can run the migrations by saying Alembic upgrade heads, and that upgrades the or that just runs the migrations here. So if you look at the migrations file, it ran this. So now we should have a prompts table, and we should be able to browse it. So let's run Uvicorn main app and check that the prompts table is there. So in our API, we need to actually add prompts here, which hasn't been added. But if we take a look at our database, so to browse our database, what we can do is I'll open the table plus and look at this thing. So this has post, prompt, and user, and that indicates that we have all three. Now if we wanted to add to the routes, we can just copy the post router, paste it here, rename it to prompt, and we could actually just do a search and replace of posts with prompts. Now the case matters, so let's make sure we don't add the wrong case. So change everything that's uppercase post to uppercase prompt, and change everything that's lowercase this is post read, so we can change that to prompt read. This should be lowercase, so we can do it manually. This is prompt read. Post is So this is actually a post, so that's going to remain post. And prompt, we don't need this line, and this is going to be prompt. So that's our read operation, or the create operation. Now we can do our read operation. So here, now we have posts here. We don't need this line. There's one more way to do it, which might be simpler, which is to change OST to ROMPT. So let's do that. Here we can change prompts, change this to prompt, change that to prompt. Then this one also changes to prompt. So that should now have all the routes for prompt. So let's double check in our docs, and this hasn't gotten added because we didn't register it. So to register it, we can just go to main.py, add the prompt admin, so we have our prompt admin, and we can add prompt here as the view. And refresh this. Posts, users, so we're missing prompts. Let's take a look at the router here. We can do it below post. So we added the prompt router, and we need to import the prompt router as well. So let's do that. So now we have our prompt router. Let's take a look. So this is our prompts routes. So we have CRUD for prompts now. Now the prompts authentication should be the same as posts authentication. So let's see if that is correct. We first create a user here. So let's create our user and just call it Code Labs Pro. And add a password here. And we got a 200 response code, so the user was created. And now we can check if the user is in here. So the Code Labs Pro user is there. Now to check if we have our prompts in admin, we can see we do have prompts in admin. We have the Code Labs user here, so we can say test prompt body 1, and you'll notice that this body text is essentially a text field which can expand. That's because we use the text column. And test title 1, test prompt title 1. So now when we add this prompt and we go back to our docs and we search for prompts using the read function, we can see it's saying not authenticated, so we need to authenticate first. So use the email to authenticate. And now run the same read prompts and we get our prompt back. So this actually covers pretty much all the migrations flow. We can run another migration just to see if we can migrate post as well. So if we went to the post model and we looked at the body field, which is a string right now, and we wanted to change that to text instead of string, we could do the same thing we did for prompt. So we take our prompt column text declaration, replace the string declaration with the text declaration, go ahead and change the same thing here. Instead of optional string, we can make it okay, so it's still a string as far as the data class is concerned, so we don't need to change this optional here. So we would have to run the migration. So let's run the migration using our migration command, which we have up here, which is this command. So let's say we're adding text to body field of post model, and that creates the migration in our versions folder, which is this one. And now we can run the migration using Alembic upgrade heads, and that ran the migration. So we could actually just see if the migrations ran correctly. So we would have to run unicorn, and just check the read on posts. And although there's no we need to authenticate first. So let's take a look at posts. And right now it's empty because there are no posts, so we could go to admin and create a post there. Oh, one thing about admin is when we want to log in, we can use username here and log in, and the posts now should have a body which is a text field. So we can expand this and say test prompt, test post body 1 and test post title 1. So if we save that, now we have our posts also conforming to the new model, which is the migrated model with the text column. So let's take a look here, read posts, and we have the post coming back. So that covers migrations. One nice thing about this is that when we deploy, we don't need to make any changes to our database configuration because everything is being read from the environment, and locally the environment is in the .env file, but in our cloud hosting, the environment would be declared as environment variables in the cloud. So that covers the migrations lab. See you in the next one. Thanks.